Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
And I'm delighted to say a great friend is joining us on the podcast today. Ian Smith, the former New Zealand wicketkeeper and, of course, celebrated commentator, famous for his many lines at the end of matches or even in the middle of matches. And we're just going to play a little clip here of your commentary at the end of that match I really enjoyed, actually. Australia against Afghanistan in Mumbai, when Glenn Maxwell played that extraordinary innings and got a double hundred to get Australia over the line. Let's just hear how you commentated on that at the end.
Everybody here's on their feet. Yeah! Unbelievable! The most remarkable thing you'll probably ever see in cricket. Staggering! Absolutely mind-blowing! What a win! And he should not have to walk off the park. He should be carried off. What a performance!
So, Smithy, lovely to see you. What are you doing at the moment? Because we don't hear you on the World Cup women's commentary.
What am I doing? I'm doing some radio shows at home. I work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday back here in New Zealand on a show that goes nationwide between 9 and 12. It's called Mornings with Ian Smith, and we do a kind of, I guess, the serious part of radio sport. We do quite a lot of in-depth interviews. We try to have a little bit of fun, but by and large, it's pretty serious stuff, and we cover all ranges of sports. Really depends on what's happening in the country at any one time or what's topical. So at the moment, the big focus, of course, on England playing New Zealand at cricket, but also New Zealand rugby side, the All Blacks play Ireland this weekend in Chicago. We've just had our women's side knocked out of course, the Women's Cricket World Cup, which was amazingly disappointing, really. And as I speak to you right now, live in New Zealand, New Zealand netball team is playing against Australia in a thing called the Constellation Cup. There's a wide array of sports that we cover without being too specialist in one area, but obviously I don't mind talking about cricket when I can.
It's a life of Riley, isn't it? You wake up at 7:30, your wife brings you a cup of tea in bed, then you sort of stagger to your studio in your house and talk about world sport, and then pack up at lunchtime and have the afternoon off. What a life.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, I walk to work and walk home. It's just, I mean, hold the phone here though, fellas. I'm 68. Which means I've been on the pension in New Zealand now for 3 years. A lot of people my age don't even work at all. So, to have to get out of bed at an ungodly early hour after working for 40-something years of my life, nearly 50 years of my life, paying tax every year, by the way, too. That might be of interest to you. Here I am. I'm still working. It's just, it's appalling, really.
It's not really work, is it? But anyway, lovely to see you and hear you. So we'll talk a little bit about the England-New Zealand series, which, of course, England have just lost, having lost that second match in Hamilton. And it's worth just saying, by the way, that this podcast is supported by TNT Sports, and you can watch all the New Zealand-England games. There's one left, of course, on Saturday on TNT Sports. And, of course, the Ashes that follows. We're going to talk about the Ashes in a bit as well. And you get TNT Sports by going to either EE or Virgin Media or Sky, or you can watch TNT Sports also on Discovery Plus if you buy a subscription. And, of course, you have to be 18 and over, and terms and conditions apply. So thank you to TNT for supporting us. The final match of this series is on Saturday in Wellington. New Zealand have already sealed it 2-0. And Simon, you watched a bit of it, or all of it, and so did I. It wasn't great watching if you're an England fan.
Well, I will say that if you can't join the coverage when it starts, because it starts in the early hours of the morning, get up at breakfast time and watch the climax to the match. But I'm afraid that's not happened in two matches. They've been over so quickly. 72 overs and 70 overs today. It was almost like the same game being played twice. Not quite the same, but a sort of similar feel to it. England losing wickets and then New Zealand cantering to victory. Really, they were never really seriously threatened. They lost a few wickets, but they were home well inside the distance, as they were in that first match in Mount Maunganui. And England's record in one-day international cricket is
Terrible.
wretched.
Yeah.
Absolutely wretched. I mean, they are in slight danger of not even qualifying for the World Cup. They'd have to play really badly between now and the qualification date for that not to happen. But their record this year is 1-4 and lost 10. And those 3 of those 4 victories were against West Indies, who were pretty poor themselves. And one of the wins was against South Africa in a dead series. Harry Brook alluded to it actually at the end of the match, because he was asking about how you play. No, we'll just keep on playing the same way. It was only a couple of matches ago we made 400 against South Africa. But it does look, I'm interested in get Ian Smith's view on this. It just looks as though the formula England have for one-day international cricket is a bit formulates. Go hard, go hard, go hard. If it doesn't work, oh well, try again next time. And it's worked occasionally, but it doesn't look to be working consistently.
I've watched England play, and they're an immensely talented side. There's no doubt about that. But I just don't know if they've quite grasped the concept of 50 overs and the fact that you've got a hell of a lot more time than you think you have. And all of them are terrific players at certain times, but they seem to be in a heck of a hurry to do everything. And I understand that, because that's the Brendan philosophy, that never waste a ball in one-day cricket. And he kind of reinvented it around about 2014, 2015, and everyone thought, wow, this is exciting. We're not going to have that flat period in the middle of the 30-over period where everyone just dots it around and doesn't get out, and then we have a charge at the end, keep wickets in hand. Well, he changed that. But I think he has to reset his sights just a little bit in terms of his tactics, because there's a lot of the game, as you mentioned, 72 overs today, 70 the other day. There's a lot of the game not even being played. It's because England are selling themselves short, I think, particularly in the batting side of things. And I'm just a little bit worried, with a view to mind. The other thing I will say about this particular series, if I was an England cricketer, this would be important to me. But if I was involved in the Ashes as well coming up, I'd have half a thought on that, because I think it's, without doubt, it's way more important. The Ashes is way more important in this series, which really counts for not a lot in all seriousness. So maybe there's a bit of that going on. Maybe there's just a little bit of complacency about it. There's all sorts of talk about the fact that England like to have a good time when they're on tour, and what I mean by that is they like to play golf, they like to see the sights, they like to get out and about, and maybe that has to be tempered a wee bit. But look, I'd be more worried about some of the form and some of the ways some of the players are getting out, particularly because then you're not really giving your bowlers enough chance to win the game. And I thought Archer was outstanding today. There's no doubt about it. But after Archer, I didn't think there was a hell of a lot of threat, to be perfectly honest. When it comes to the batting side of it, Harry Brook's outstanding. We know Joe Root is as well. But there's not a lot else that you could actually hang your hat on and say, wow, we're ready for whatever is around the corner, because it just doesn't look like it to me.
It's going to be a headline on this podcast. It's going to be Brook or bust, I think, because at the moment England just haven't got that kind of momentum with other batters. I wonder if one of the things, and make an interesting point about the batting and their approach, bowled out today, I think in 35 overs, and I think one thing that England tend to forget about 50-over cricket is you've got 2 white balls, 2 new white balls. So you've got top, crackerjack fast bowlers opening the bowling, and they might have bowled 5 overs with the new ball, but that ball is only 5 overs old. So it's still hard and shiny. And the likes of Matt Henry and others, and obviously, players like Blair Tickner, who played today, and a new one I hadn't heard of before the first match, Zach Fulks as well. He got 4 wickets in the first match. I mean, these guys are good bowlers with a hard white Kookaburra ball, which, in a 20-over game, the ball it gets old very quickly. It gets smashed around, and, you can play those almost kamikaze type of shots and get away with them. But in 50-over cricket, you have to be a little bit more nuanced. And if you look at, say, New Zealand today, Kane Williamson, Rashid Ravinda played a more kind of circumspect innings. Obviously, they were only chasing a small target, but they played, proper cricket. And I think that's where you're alluding to, that England perhaps need to think about that as well.
Oh, look, they do, from my way of thinking, in terms of 50 over cricket. They just have to give themselves a better chance. And they're such good strikers of the ball, and they're such powerful players, and they're able to hit the ball to all parts of the ground. But they don't have to do it in the first 35 overs. They just have to bat sensibly. I was talking to John Bracewell, actually. You remember John coached New Zealand. He coached Gloucestershire for a while. He also was, one of our better spinners over the course of our history. He says he fears for England because they don't look like they can handle the ball when it moves. In other words, it's all very well to bash the ball around on feather beds and on pitches that don't do very much, and if they do it, they don't do it for very long. But he fears the fact that they've got out of the habit of being able to handle a ball that's moving, whether it be a little bit off the seam or certainly in the air. And when it comes to the Ashes, he thinks that Stark will be a major factor because he's a left armer who can move the ball appreciably, particularly early on in the piece. And he thinks that he could have right-handers in real trouble in front of the stumps and left-handers playing away, which is just orthodox cricket when you think about it. But if you haven't played it or you don't respect it, you're going to struggle against it. So that to me is a bit of an issue, and I've seen that. And we're playing this series right now. Unbelievably, we've played Australia already, but this is a very early part of our summer.
Well, you don't even start club cricket, do you, until kind of mid-October or something?
Exactly. I mean, a lot of club guys have played cricket, but not on grass pitches because they're just not ready yet. So here we are having an international series in this situation. The weather has been appalling. We haven't had a semblance of anything like a summer yet to bake the pitches or to make the blocks hard. And so they're going to do things. It's going to do a little bit more than perhaps you're used to. And I don't think England have kind of fathomed that, to be perfectly honest. And from that point of view, it's a little bit disappointing. And, in about 2.5 weeks' time, they hop on a plane. They're in Perth, and it'll be quick. It'll be bouncy. It'll be dry, and it'll crack. We all know that, like Perth pitches do. A whole different new surface. And I think the lesson there is you have to be able to adjust to where things are happening at that particular time. And from what I've seen so far, they just have not been able to adjust. On this very same ground they got beaten today, they got absolutely given a hiding in a test match not that long ago by New Zealand, a real hiding. And I said to your very good friend, Michael Atherton, I said, if they're going to play like that, Australia will beat them 5-0 because they just played with such a carefree attitude that I think they got beaten by 400 or 500 runs or something. It was just the most amazingly big hiding you can think of. And he just laughed at me and said, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see, as Athers would say. But look, I fear for them a wee bit. No Pat Cummins, sure. And he's terrific, world-class bowler, but so Scott Boland. And I've just seen a bit of Hazelwood in this country, and he's still landing it on a handkerchief. And Mitchell Stark's been waiting for a while and hasn't been playing a hell of a lot of cricket. So they look good. But I will say, and I'll probably gazumped you a wee bit talking the Ashes here, but what worries me most of all is people are starting to write off Nathan Lyon, and I would not be doing that, not in Australian conditions. I simply would not. And if you believe that you have a one spin bowler capable of matching Nathan Lyon, then I think you can win the Ashes. If you haven't got one that's close to Nathan Lyon, I think you might be pushing it uphill.
Interesting. I mean, it's a very fair points you make. Funnily enough, I was watching an Instagram clip the other day by some guy I'd never heard of, actually, who was talking about Rob Key's interviews on a couple of podcasts that are quite big in England at the moment, the Stick to Cricket one with Michael Vaughan and Phil Tufnell and others. and also For the Love of Cricket with Stuart Broad and Joss Butler. And Rob Key appeared, the director of cricket in England, appeared on both of those podcasts and basically sort of tried to argue why they've gone with certain players, including Shoaib Bashir. And no one actually said to him, well, hang on a minute, you want a player, a spinner, who can hold an end up and, be a sort of restrictive presence, allowing fast bowlers to rotate at the other end. That's the role of a spinner, often in Australia in particular. And Bashir's got his economy rate of about 4.5, or even maybe higher than that, five and over. So how's that work? But nobody actually asked Rob Key that question. But isn't that a key thing? That's what Lyon does. As much as he takes wickets, is he just, he's that sort of, he sucks up a lot of pressure, allowing the fast bowlers to rotate the other end, which you need to do in Australia because of the heat.
Oh, exactly. I mean, he's been brilliant. I mean, over a long, long period of time now, I think 546 wickets or something like that, which is great. They call him the GOAT, the greatest of all time in terms of off spinners that they've produced anyway. And you can't argue with that in terms of Australian statistics, but he does that. He's quite an aggressive fast bowler. He's got spin bowler. He's got plenty to say. He'll engage you. He's a very busy cricketer, but you've got to try and deny him if you can. You've got to. He's not young. None of them are young anymore. So even spinners get tired, and that's what England have got to perhaps do. I suspect they'll probably go the other way and try and belt him out of the park and shake his confidence, particularly early on. Not sure that would be the one thing I would be doing at this stage anyway, but that to me is one of the big factors is can England's batting lineup, can they withstand the new ball, and then can they outweight Nathan Lyon? I think that's a huge factor in the Ashes. Having said that, I've never seen going into the Ashes a more uncertain look about an Australian batting lineup, to be honest.
Yeah, well, listen, we'll come to that actually in a bit. Just as a quick final point on the one-day series in New Zealand, that New Zealand have obviously won. Simon, you made the point after the first match, which Harry Brook made an incredible 100, that it was a bit like watching England v West Indies in 1984 when Viv Richards got an incredible, one of the great innings. I mean, we've heard a bit of that Glenn Maxwell extraordinary 200 in the World Cup, but the Viv Richards 180, what was it, 187 at Old Trafford, putting on 90 for the last wicket with Michael Holding. No one else got a run. And you said that it was a bit like watching Harry Brook the other day with no one else getting a run in that innings.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. That so dominant was Brook. Just slightly tongue-in-cheek comment, and then the rest of England's batting was like watching England's batting in 1984 against the West Indies, where they crumbled. But it was stunning hitting. One thing I'd like to ask Smithy actually is, so the pitches have done a bit, and people who haven't seen the coverage on TNT won't have seen necessarily the fact that folks, for example, got the ball to swing, and he did get the ball to go in that first one-day international. There was a bit in it today. What do England do in situations like that? I mean, presumably, Harry Brook seems to be saying, no, we just go harder. We have to improvise, and he uses his feet. He gives himself room because he thinks probably, I don't know, the ball's doing enough. He'll get me out if I just play conventionally. What should England do? I mean, presumably they need to adapt in conditions like that rather than just go hard. I think Brooks' comment was basically to Wellington. He said, "Same again. Hope it comes off this time." Was his comment afterwards. What do England do if they're confronted by these type of conditions?
Simon, I think what England have to do better is think on their feet. They have to sum up a situation a little bit quicker than they are at the moment, and be a little bit more common sense about what they're doing. I mean, if they can bat, if they bat 50 overs, England, they'll get 280, 290 minimum, because that's the way they score. But they've got to bat 50 overs. And that's what the game's designed for. It's designed to bat for 50 overs. I mean, we used to have the cardinal sin was to not use your 50 overs. Well, England aren't even close to using their 50 overs. So there's no absolute mystery about why they're getting beaten. They're just not thinking on their feet. They're not just readjusting their sights and saying, well, actually, this is not a 300 pitch. It might be a 260, 270 pitch, but let's make sure we get at least 250, 5 and over, which these days is quite conservative. But then at least you give your bowlers a half a decent crack at, at what they've got to do. But you get only the score that they got today. You can afford to play Archer out. You don't have to go after Archer. You just sit back and you say, look, if Archer gets 2 for 35, we'll win the game. If he gets 5 for 40, we probably won't. But if he gets 2 for 30, he would have bowled a lot of dot balls today, Jofra Archer, because New Zealand would and Williamson's perfect at this, and so's Daryl Mitchell to a certain extent. They'll wait. They can wait. They'll back themselves to wait, and they work out the most dangerous aspect of the opposition and try and nullify it. And that aspect of the game has not changed since day one. You take out or try to nullify the biggest threat, and if you can do that, you go a long way towards winning. And at the moment, I don't think England are playing very smart, put it that way. It kept me entertaining. But as you say, the record suggests that entertaining's okay. It's one thing, but the record at the moment in this form of the game, for the standard of player that they produce, is abysmal.
Well, actually, 7 series in the last 2 years. They've lost 6 of them. The only series they've won is the one against the West Indies at home, who were pretty weak. So you're right. I mean, the record is terrible. I mean, of course, a lot of these young players, especially the younger ones, haven't played much 50-over cricket because they don't play in the domestic one-day cup because it's become a sort of, second 11 or young players tournament. And a lot of the premier players in England are playing in the 100. So they don't play in 50-over cricket. So they have very little experience of actually playing it. Also, I think bowlers have come back a little bit, haven't they, in 50-over cricket, as I said, with the 2 new white balls and 1 or 2 new strategies. And actually, there was quite an interesting moment today when Joe Root was caught down the leg side. I think it was a sequence of 3 balls all went down the leg side, and umpires have become more lenient about the ball going down the leg side. So it's just given bowlers a bit more scope. Which it was so limiting for bowlers before. You had to basically bowl at the middle of the bat, and if you didn't, it was a wide. And now at least they can go both sides of the wicket a bit more, and that just gives them a little bit more kind of leeway. Root was out to 1 today, looked furious, but it was a totally understandable dismissal. So, and actually also to your point about batting the 50 overs, I mean the 2 or 3 one-day matches they've had in Australia, India-Australia games, have been relatively sort of lowish scoring. There haven't been 350, 400 scores. They've been 250, 270, 280, and been quite good games. So maybe, the perception of batters has to rein back in a bit in 50-over cricket.
Well, look,
the ambition.
I just think that they've got to give themselves a better chance. And particularly when you're out of form a wee bit, the best way to find form is to spend some time in the middle, and use this opportunity to make you feel good about your own game. And that doesn't mean smacking a couple through the covers for 4. That doesn't necessarily mean you're back in nick. You've got to bat time, and the time allotted for one-day cricket is 50 overs, which means you can bat. If you bat at the top of the order, you can bat for 3 hours, 3 and a bit hours if you like. You're going to get 100 plus and do that. And that's going to make you feel a hell of a lot better about your game. And I just don't know. I don't know the England mindset. I'm not inside their heads. I thought I knew Baz pretty well, Brendan pretty well. But he's even more, I think, aggressive and more front foot than he was when he was playing for New Zealand. We don't know him as a coach over here. We only know him as a player. We've read about what he talks about. We've read about his attitude and the fact that he backs his players and he gives them plenty of opportunity to do their stuff. But at the end of the day, even he must be thinking now, when he looks at that record and thinking, it's not working. It's just simply not working. But again, off the pace today, Wellington will be another surface. It's a drop-in pitch on a rugby ground, basically. So it may be drier. It may be a little bit drier because of the preparation it gets. It's not in the middle of a wicket square, as you call them. It'll be dropped in, and we'll see how that plays. But in the past, it hasn't been easy to get big runs on it. So we'll see. It'll be another test for them, and I'll see how they go about it. But it's to me, it's an attitudinal thing. It's not not a hugely technical thing, because they're good players. They're very good players, but they just need to reassess what they want to do in this form of the game, I feel.
It's worth making the point, actually, for those who haven't caught up with it, that New Zealand, after their power play, were 32 for 1, which emphasises Ian Smith's point there about Williamson, for example, just looking to stick in and just play Jofra Archer off. There's no way that England would have been 32 for 1 after 10 overs, chasing 170. They would have looked to go hard. But it's also worth thinking about in the Test arena that England did adapt last summer, didn't they? So you feel that that idea is floating around in the Test arena. For example, at Lords on the first day against India, they were about 250 in a day, which we hadn't seen for a long time. So it seems that they were prepared last summer to just tweak things in Test cricket and not go hard the whole time. So perhaps there's something that they need to think about in one-day cricket, especially if the losses keep racking up, because it's kind of unsustainable, isn't it? I mean, you can't just keep saying, well, this is the way we play, and then getting shellacked every time. At least with Test cricket, they would play aggressively, and it would come off. They would win some matches. They would, they were winning. It was working for them after the relative low point of the Joe Root captaincy era and towards the end of it. So it started to work. But in one-day cricket, apart from that match against South Africa, which was a dead rubber at the end of the series, it's not worked so far. You might say it's an early sample size because Brendan McCullum hasn't been coach of the white ball side for very long. But I mean, two pretty ordinary displays really in the first 2 matches, which is not to. I mean, New Zealand are a good side as well. They're a good side. I mean, they get to finals. They're a successful side. They're second in the world in one-day international cricket.
Well, we didn't have who didn't win it today. We didn't have Matt Henry, who's been our best bowler for the last 2 to 3 years. We've got a really good crop of quick bowlers actually in our country at the moment, but most of them are injured. Will O'Rourke, Ben Sears, we've got Adam Milne, we've got Lockie Ferguson, genuinely good white ball bowlers who have not been available to New Zealand in this series. We've got no Glenn Phillips. So it's not as if we're at absolute peak performance ourselves.
What about Devon Conway as well? Where's he? Is he not?
Devon Conway's carrying the drinks at the moment. Will Young failed again today, so you may see Devon Conway play in Wellington, which is his hometown. So you may see Devon Conway play there. But we're just ticking over. That's what New Zealand sides do, really. We just tick over. We're not sensational. We just try to get the best out of what we do, and manufacture a really consistent performance about that. And people always say you punch above your weight, but we don't really punch above our weight, because we just use our weight the right way that we can use it. And that is not to be too spectacular at times. Ours is to push the game as far as it can go, as deep in most games as we can possibly go. The deeper we go, the more we feel we've got a chance. And and we've had a history of that over, I don't know, the last 30 years, really. We've made World Cup semi-finals. We've never won one, but generally speaking, we're there or thereabouts. The Champions Trophy, we were there or thereabouts. We just are able to hang in there and get the best out of each other, and trust in our techniques and trust in our theories. And it's not spectacular. It's not rocket science, but it just seems to work.
Is there a kind of a sort of humility about New Zealand cricketers as well, which comes to their aid? I mean, Kane Williamson is the embodiment of that, isn't he? I mean, he's such a kind of modest, self-deprecating, kind of quiet kind of individual, isn't he? Really, but his performance is absolutely monumental. and his influence. And I just listened to him. Actually, he's been playing for Middlesex, my old team, this summer. And, listening to him talking to the players, and he's so considered. And he must be a wonderful role model. And these other players, I mean, Daryl Mitchell, fabulous cricketer, very aggressive, but, hugely talented. And as you say, they sort of get the most out of themselves.
We give Daryl Mitchell a job, and he does it effectively. He's batted at the top of the order. He's found a little niche now in the middle order where he can bat with the tail. But the thing about Daryl Mitchell is he's smart, and he just gets the best out of himself more often than not because he gives himself an opportunity. And he's a brilliant thinker, I think, and he's also very, very patient, and he's an interesting person because he's never actually been considered for captaincy. He doesn't captain his provincial side. He's never captained New Zealand side. So maybe they just think about Daryl Mitchell as just let him play cricket, just let him bat, let him do the job that we want him to do, and we'll get maximum benefit out of him. So he's an interesting, but again, they sum up the situation, and even Rachin Ravindra was, who I've been a little bit worried about because I kind of think he wants to play $1 million shot every second ball, and that didn't work against great bowlers, not for long anyway. But today he readjusted his sights, and they say that he bats better with Williamson than he does with other players because he wants to be out there with him. He doesn't want to let Williamson down. He's prepared to play almost second fiddle to Williamson, but the longer he's out there, the more he's learning, the more he's and Williamson will be in his ear. And I just think that partnership today was very, very important, even though it wasn't that substantial. It was enough to get New Zealand well and truly on the way towards winning. And they didn't have to do it in spectacular fashion. They didn't have to cover drives. They didn't have to go down the wicket and anyone over the top for six because they just knew that they could play cricket, and they got there easily.
And actually, that relationship with Williamson and Ravindra, I suppose it's a bit like Root and Brook, isn't it? The master at one end and the sort of pupil at the other, and the respect, and you got the best view in the house at the non-striker's end, and you can see that person's mentality and their tempo and their approach to certain bowlers. And I mean, it must be just a fantastic learning curve to watch. And I must say also, Mitchell Santner, what a fantastic cricketer he is as well. A very underrated, under the radar cricketer with both bat and ball. He finished the game today with a flurry of boundaries. So impressive by New Zealand. Listen, we'll take a quick break. I think we've talked a lot about that series. We must get onto the Ashes straight after the break.
Well, let's talk about the Ashes now. One, it's not far away. It'll be on TNT Sports. Smithy, who do New Zealanders support when the Ashes come around? Do they support Australia, or do they support England, or do they support neither? It's one of those that you can't win, but you can't lose.
Well, I think if you took a straw poll, I think probably most people over here would take England. For a couple of reasons. We just like seeing Australia get beat at most things, but we also realise that within the England ranks, there's a hell of a lot of New Zealand input. We've got Brendan, obviously. Some people still say Ben Stokes has got quite a lot of Kiwi in him. Then you've got Tim Southey over there helping out at the moment, and of course, Jeet Patel. I mean, I got my phone here. I'm a little bit disappointed Brendan hasn't rung me. I got plenty to offer as well, but it's just like, wow. So there's a genuine feeling that there's New Zealand interest in this particular series coming up. So I think honestly, they'd like to see Australia knocked over because we just do. We like to see them beaten. They're big brother. They bully us a wee bit, so we'd quite like to see them get beat.
I've got great memories, actually, of playing for one of your club sides in Auckland in the mid-'80s. So, 40 years ago, it's pretty sort of scary, really. But and we used to troop down after nets on a sort of Tuesday night in Ellerslie, in Auckland. We used to troop down to, I think it was a pub called the Ellerslie Oaks,
That's it.
and it had a satellite feed of cricket from Australia. Which was 2 hours behind, sort of thing. So 8 or 9 o'clock in New Zealand. It was, I don't know, 7 or 8 o'clock in Australia, and they were playing a day-night game against the West Indies. And the West Indies of that era, the 80s, well, we've mentioned them earlier in this podcast, haven't we? Were just immense, and they just trounced Australia every time with Viv and Joel Garner and Michael Holding and all those great players, Clive Lloyd, etc. It was just a brilliant spectacle to see under lights, which was kind of quite new then in a way, to see the West Indies just hammering these, pompous Australians and taking them down a peg or two. And the Kiwis just absolutely loved it.
Oh, look, we did. I mean, because it was a long, long time before Australia actually deemed us worthy of playing against them. We used to send a team when I was basically around just before that time. We used to send a team to play in the Gillette Cup, which is the state competition. It was the state competition back then. Those days, they had the Sheffield Shield and first class cricket, and then they had the Gillette Cup, which was a one-day competition, and we basically sent a New Zealand 11 over there as part of that competition, and that's pretty much what they would allow us. And then it took forever, I think, really until about the early 70s, when they showed us any real interest in being a genuine test rival. And we beat them in 74. That gave them a bit of a kick in the pants. And then we went over there and beat them over there in 85 in a series for the first time. And I think at that point they started to take us a little bit more seriously. But that genuinely has been the way that they've looked at us. And their record against us is pretty dominant. They'd beat us 8 out of 7 or 8 out of 10 even these days in most forms of the game. But we just live for those other two. And so it's they're a better cricketing nation than us. There's no two ways about it. But every now and then we get it right and they get it slightly wrong and we pounce. And that's, as I said, that's what we wait for.
Well, we're not far away now. I mean, that's that one day international coming up at the weekend, and then for England, their next
23 days it is.
Yeah, their next match is Perth on the 21st of November. What do you we've touched on it a little bit, but what do you make of the sort of the Dad's Army tag around Australia? That that is this one last hurrah for them, or is it these days cricketers go on longer, don't they? There's better recovery programs, they're looked after better, probably diet, fitness, all those type of things, and also the rewards in the game to keep going as well. So is age really irrelevant here, or do you think there could potentially be a factor?
Age might be a factor over the course of 5 test matches. Now, I've been in Australia commentating for a couple of seasons just recently, and their bowlers just want to bowl every game. They want to play every game, every test match. Stark, Hazelwood, Cummins and Lyon, they just want to play every test match. So the old saying over there is never give a mug an even break, so don't let anyone else play in your place unless you're genuinely injured. So they're desperate. Whether this is, we're talking about some pretty old legs here now. And the fact of the matter is they will start to feel it's quite a quick Ashes in terms of its period of play. She's all over in the first week of January basically, so it's pretty quick fire. And that also looks at how England are going to manage their bowling attack, and that seems to be one of the big points of conjecture is the workloads of bowlers these days. We saw it, didn't we, in England with probably one of the best bowlers in the world in Jasprit Bumrah, but he was never going to play every test match, and that's what you've got to take into account now, how you manage the bowling loads of some of the more tired old legs. So how that works, it will depend on a lot on how long England want to bat and how England can bat. If England can keep Australia in the park for over 100 overs early in the series, those guys just will not be able to play 5 test matches. They simply will not be able to do that. If they get knocked over like they have in this country very cheaply in 40, 50, 60 overs, in the space of under one new ball, those guys are going to come back tomorrow and they'll be ready to go again. You've got to make it hard for them. You've got to make the muscles weary. You've got to make the back sore when they get out of bed in the morning. And those are the factors that England have got to try and do that. And for that, they've got to take the games long. They've got to try and take the game long. And that exposes old age. That exposes even the highest levels of experience get tired if they're stuck out there for a long period of time. And England have got to think seriously about that. You know, if they might get 300 in a day, but if it's only a day, that won't hurt as much. They won't hurt too much. If they're all out for 300 in a day, that's nice. It's nice. What, 4 and over? It's a healthy run rate, but the Australian bowlers will recover from that. They had to keep them out there a day and a half, day and 3/4, bake them in their own conditions. That's their best chance for mine.
Are we going to see Joe Root make his first 100 in Australia, or are we going to see Matthew Hayden, your commentating colleague, running naked around the MCG, as he's promised to do if Root doesn't get 100?
Well, I hope like hell Root gets 100, because the other option's not a pretty one. I promise.
That's right.
So, look, I think Joe Root will get 100. I think he's a magnificent player. He's one of the greats. I've got tremendous respect for him. I think his class and his quality, but he's not going to get it easily. It's going to be tough. They'll remind him of it every single time they walk past him. They'll remind him of it. And he's been around a lot, so he'll be able to take a lot of that. But they'll be chipping away, working away at him. And every time he doesn't get one, it'll double up the next time, because that's the way Australia go about things. But I think technically, I think he'll get there. I really do think he'll get 100. I hope he does, actually, because it's a horrible thing to almost be, as great as him and still have one thing hanging over your head that won't let go. I think he'll get 100 there. I can't tell you where, but if he gets a flat pitch in Adelaide, and it's not a day-night test in Adelaide. Adelaide is a great pitch to get 100 on. I wouldn't be surprised to do that, but I'd really like to see him do it on Boxing Day at the MCG. Wouldn't that be special?
So if you were behind the stumps when he comes in that first test match and until he gets it, what sort of things would you be saying? Obviously, it's slightly different if Nathan Lyon's bowling, because you're right in his right ear. But if you're obviously standing back with the pace bowlers bowling, you're a bit further away. But what would you be saying to Joe Root about that 100? What sort of sledges, if you like, would you be coming up with?
Oh, look, my language would be different to the average Australian wicketkeeper. I can promise you that. But I think I would be thinking just along the lines of, still haven't got one, Joe. The monkey's still sitting on your back. And what a terrible thing to come to this country so often and still not get what you really want, and just play away all the time. And you don't have to be vulgar or too nasty about the whole thing. Just let them know and make sure that it's not just a one person doing it, not just your keeper. It's everyone that walks past them every now and then just says, "Not today, Joe. I don't think it's today either. You're not playing well enough." Those sorts of things. And at the end of the day, someone will win, but it might inspire Joe Root. I don't know. I mean, we used to have a policy with Javed Miandad, the great Pakistani batsman. He used to love being engaged. You engage and chat with Javed Miandad, and that was like a recipe for disaster. So we just ignore him, try to ignore him. And he's a very hard guy to ignore, I can promise you that. But he had a record against New Zealand which was just unbelievably good. And I just, you kind of pick your battles. But I know Nathan Lyon, he'd be all over him. Alex Carey, maybe he's not. I think Alex Carey's still living in the Bairstow situation a wee bit, to be perfectly honest. I think And I know Alex Carey, and I kind of think it got to him more than a lot of people
Yeah,
really
definitely.
realised that whole scenario. So I don't see him as a Rodney Marsh, Brad Haddon,
No.
Malby wicket keeper. Not in that bracket at all. Or Heels for that matter.
He's just a nice sort of next door boy next door chap, isn't he?
He is. He just appears that to me. He really does.
Yeah. Mm.
And I don't think you get too much out of Kawaja. I mean, he just seems to walk from first slip to first slip and worry about everything else in life. But there's, and even Stark, and I mean, they're not, they're not nasty. They're not nasty
No.
fasties. They're not villainous. They used to be. You might even enjoy a chat with some of them. I don't know. I don't think. I think it'll be low key. It'll be low key sledging, and it won't be. I don't think it'll be overdone to any degree. But they know that Joe Root is the biggest threat. They know that Joe Root is. If Joe Root has a great series, you'll probably take the urn home. They know that, and so they'll work away at him.
So they're not going to be using the sledge that I was confronted with in my first match in Australia. Simon's heard this loads of times, where I came out to bat and the wicketkeeper just said to me as I took guard, "Mate, you're as welcome out here as a turd in a swimming pool." So they might use that, I suppose. But anyway, so listen, let's put you on the spot here. So I've got the list of England's first choice 11 and what would be Australia's first choice 11 if Cummins was fit. And I want you to select your 11 from the 22. So I'll give you the option of one or the other, and you just got to pick them. Okay. So starting with the top, Crawley or Khawaja?
I can't believe you put Crawley in the same sentence as Khawaja, so I'll take Khawaja. Crawley? It's serious. He's going to be there.
Yeah, well, he's got a good record in Australia, actually. He's got a good record against Australia. He averages over 40, and he's got the stats are on his side against Australia. Anyway, okay, I take your point.
Very tall walking wicket.
Yeah, Duckett or Constas if he gets the call up.
Oh, Duckett. I'll give you Duckett. Because Constas, I've had a drink with Constas, and I've had a chat with him too. He's just a kid. He's just a kid, and still learning. Immensely talented, but I'll give you Duckett any day of the week there.
Pope or Labuschagne, who's just made several hundreds, hasn't he, in Shield cricket and one-day cricket?
This is a tough one, because Marnus. I think if Marnus gets a chance and gets a bit between his teeth, he might have quite a good summer. So I'm going to go Marnus. There you go.
Okay. Root or Smith?
Well, this is because if I pick one, I'm taking some hell of a lot of class out of the game. I'll take Root, but I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. But I'll take Root, and it's an unfair comparison, unfair choice, that one.
Do you think Smith is, just tipped over the edge slightly?
No, I don't. I think because he'll be captain in the first test, won't he? So I don't think he's anywhere near tipped over the edge. I think he works too hard and he loves batting too much to be tipped over the edge.
I say we've got 2-2 at the moment. Brook or Head?
Well, this is an interesting one for me because Travis Head in Australia, he's feast or famine. He's either outstandingly brilliant or he's nothing at all. So on current form, I'd take Harry Brook. On current form of what I've seen, I'd take Harry Brook.
Okay. Stokes or, assuming he's fit, Cameron Green, number 6?
Stokes.
Yeah, okay, I thought you'd probably say that. Well, England are doing well here so far, 4-2. Jamie Smith or Alex Carey?
In Australia, Alex Carey.
Then we've got the bowlers. So Castle Cummins, assuming Cummins is fit for one of the games. Yeah, okay.
Australian conditions, Cummins.
Yeah. Archer or Stark?
Well, look what I've seen about Jofra Archer, but I think over the period of 5 test matches, I don't think Jofra Archer will play more than 3. So I'm going to say I believe that I think Mitchell Starc will get more wickets than Jofra Archer in this series, so I'll take Starc.
Wood or Hazelwood?
Hazelwood.
Just because he's relentless.
Well, and he's a great bowler, and again, in Australian conditions, he knows exactly where to land the ball. It's phenomenally good bowler, Josh Hazelwood. I mean, if it wasn't for Stark and Cummins, he would be lauded even more than he is. I think he's a terrific bowler. And don't even ask me about the spinner, Nathan Lyon. You throw your best one in, he won't match Nathan Lyon.
Okay, so it's ended up with 7-4 then. 7 Australians and only 4 Englishmen. Duckett, Root, Brooke, and Stokes, and one or two of those were marginal. Obviously, Root against Smith is a tough one, isn't it? Brooke against Head, so interesting. 7-4 to Australia, but some of those Australians are not fit, so interesting.
Yeah, we don't quite know as well. We don't quite know what the Australian side's going to be, do we? We don't quite know what that top order's going to be. Whether it's going to be Constance. I mean, you might have a situation where, could Green bat at 3 and Webster play at 6? I mean, that's a possibility. And Labuschagne, no. I mean, I don't know. I don't quite know what they're going to come up with. I don't think they probably do know, but they're not letting on. It's not obvious at the moment. Here's just one thing, and it's thought that I've been thinking about recently. When we touched on the spinner. Did England take the wrong lesson from Old Trafford? And Liam Dawson had got a lot of overs, and he held an end in the first innings, and was really steady. And England were able to bowl India out, and he couldn't bowl India out in the second innings. But no one has been able to bowl anyone out at Old Trafford all summer. All the matches there were huge stalemates. And did they look at Liam Dawson and say, "Well, you couldn't win us this game, therefore, you're not going to be able to win us anything in the Ashes"? But actually, because he's an experienced cricketer, he's a steady bowler, they kind of took the wrong lesson from Old Trafford, and they've gone back with, I say they're probably always going to go with Bashir, but they didn't go with Liam Dawson because he didn't win them that game, albeit on a really, really flat pitch. And you might say, well, who would have won them a game on that surface? I mean, Bummer went for 100 for the first time in Test cricket. So did they perhaps just take the wrong lesson from that match? Just a left field thought.
Yeah, I think it's a fine call. I think you'll find. I think you'll find spin will have quite a big influence on the series the further it goes. To be honest, I think the need you're going to have a need. I think for a genuine wicket taker, particularly in the second innings situations. So I hope that in Bashir that you've picked the right guy. But I'd be very surprised if he outbowls Nathan Lyon. I really would. And people are even some Australians are starting to think that Nathan Lyon might have had his best days, and I think that's slightly dangerous, knowing Nathan Lyon.
How do you let's just finish with a prediction then. We're not going to make ours, by the way, yet, but you've got to make yours then. So you think Australia, do you, to win the series?
I think Australia will. I think Australia will probably. If it stays fine, there'll be 5 results. That's the nature of Test cricket these days. There'll be 5 results. I think Australia will either win 3-2 or 4-1. There you go.
You're not going to be rejoining your great mate Kerry O'Keefe in the commentary box then, I take it, because you said you were doing commentary last year. I saw you in the commentary box at various places last year, but not this year?
No, not this year. My program sees me commentating on radio back in New Zealand for New Zealand against the West Indies. And then I'll head to India in mid-January for New Zealand against India in the white ball series, which leads into the T20 World Cup. So that's the extent of that. Otherwise, I'll be sitting in this studio here in New Zealand, or maybe at the loading ramp just about 500 yards down the road, or maybe at golf, but no, probably more likely to be at the pub.
cheering on England, infused by New Zealand influences.
Well, as I said, I think that'd be the popular choice over here. I'm just going not so much on the popular choice. I'm going on how I feel about um, the best players equipped to play in the best conditions, and what I've seen from from England so far, and the last couple of weeks here.
Okay.
It's been
Right, we're done.
brilliant to hear from Ian. Yeah, I think hard to disagree with his 11. Hard to disagree with his summation of what might happen in the next few weeks.
Oh, yeah, we miss New Zealand so much. It's the greatest country to tour. God, I can't wait to get back there sometime. Any fishing?
I can take you fishing, or I can get you fish. I got a son who works in a fish shop, so I can get you fish anytime you like.
It's the life, isn't it? The son who works in a fish shop. Absolutely. Listen, brilliant. Lovely to catch up with you anyway, mate. Maybe we'll touch base with you again during the series and get your kind of detached take on the Ashes. But anyway, great to see you and hear you, and we'll be back with you shortly. Thank you very much for your time. The final one-day international between England and New Zealand is in Wellington on Saturday. It's on TNT Sports, as I said.